So let's set up the scenario like this. You have 2 or maybe even 3 monitors already in your setup, and you love that it gives you an ability to do a lot of different things, both from a gaming perspective and from a productivity perspective. Things like having multiple windows open at once across several different screens so you don't have to constantly bounce back and forth, especially if you may need to look at one document while editing one completely different. That is great. Or maybe you're a game streamer and you need your game open on one monitor and you have the ability to still monitor Twitch chat as well as make sure the stream isn't dropping any frames on a separate monitor altogether. Both of those are great use case scenarios for a system with 2 or even 3 monitors. But then along comes these ultra-wide 21:9 aspect ratio monitors, and you may be asking yourself whether it's worth your money to go ahead and switch to a single ultra-wide setup instead of having 2 or even 3 monitors. Now, before I start going through the pros and cons of switching from 2 or 3 screens down to one ultra-wide monitor, I do need to point out that you can absolutely have 2 or even 3 screens with an ultra-wide incorporated into your setup. You don't have to completely ditch your additional screens. The problem is many people may not have the desk real estate to accommodate an ultra-wide with another monitor altogether. So things to consider there, but if you do have enough desk real estate available to you, absolutely an ultra-wide with a secondary like 1080p monitor or maybe even a 1440p monitor off to the side or even above it may work out really well for you, especially if you did enjoy having multiple monitors in the first place. Now, obviously, I did go ahead and make the switch. I used to have 3 monitors with a 1440p monitor in the middle, flanked by a 1080p and a 900p monitor, and that worked out really well for things like video editing because I can have folders with my different files off to the side with Premiere Pro in the middle. But video editing is actually the #1 reason I wanted an ultra-wide monitor, and that's because that timeline gets that much extra horizontal space on the screen, which makes editing an absolute joy on this monitor behind me, which is a 3440 by 1440p panel. Now, aside from just video editing, then of course games can also benefit from that extra horizontal space, especially single player games where you just get a little bit bigger of a view of what's around you. Those third-person games are especially beneficial with a monitor like this, but not all games do support that ultra-wide resolution. For example, Overwatch, which is probably my favorite multiplayer online game right now, does not support just the native 21:9 aspect ratio and just giving you a little bit bigger of a view. And that makes sense because games like that could offer a competitive advantage for people to have a different aspect ratio altogether. Now, in my case, I actually gained some desk real estate back by switching from 3 monitors down to 1. And this particular monitor has a rather gaudy base stand that comes with it. Luckily, it does have a standard base mount, so I could go ahead and mount it on the monitor arm that I already had attached to my desk here. So I didn't actually have to use that gaudy stand that did take up quite a bit of depth of the desk itself. So the monitor is out of the way, and because I don't have those 2 side monitors anymore, I actually have a cleaner overall setup, so I can basically just put a little bit more junk on my desk without it interfering with the monitor itself. So that's great, and it still does everything I need it to do. Now, that's not to say that there aren't compromises with going back to a single monitor setup. For example, going back to the Twitch streamer sort of setup there, monitoring a stream as well as a Twitch chat, for example, gets a little bit more clumsy when you're going to a single monitor, especially when you have to run a game in something like a windowed mode so that you can still have other windows open on your desktop and be able to see those. Now, obviously, that could be solved with something like a laptop off to the side, which is a decent implementation anyways. But if you are somebody that really only has one rig and you need to make it work, then maybe one screen isn't enough for you, and that's something that you'll really have to consider for yourself. And now, video editing is not exempt from any of the cons of switching from 3 screens down to 1 screen. For example, in Premiere Pro, I actually move it over just a little bit from full screen so I can have a couple folders open on the desktop and be able to just click and drag audio or video files over to Premiere Pro, which does eat up a little of that beneficial horizontal space for the timeline. It's just something to keep in mind. It's a minor inconvenience to get that set up when I start the video editing tasks that I do, but it is definitely a little bit of a cost of moving down to 1 monitor in that you have to make it work with just that 1 screen. With multiple screens, you just drag a folder off to one of the side screens and you're good to go, with your main screen completely being filled up by Premiere Pro. So the real question for you as a consumer, especially if you already have 2 or 3 screens, is it worth moving down to a single ultra-wide setup, or can you do something to get around that? Maybe you have enough space on your desk to have another monitor. Maybe you can attach a monitor arm to the back of your desk or to the side of your desk and have a floating display off to the left or to the right of an ultra-wide display. But I will say this about my limited time using this display so far. I have not regretted losing those extra 2 screens. Yes, there are some minor inconveniences here and there, especially when I'm trying to be productive, but the extra screen real estate really is awesome, especially in certain games. Like The Witcher 3 benefits greatly from a 21:9 aspect ratio screen. You just get a bigger view of the world around Geralt as you roam around the wilderness or in towns, and other games are not exempt from that. In addition, this monitor itself, just the resolution is amazing on it, especially with the G-Sync module. Games are buttery smooth compared to what I was coming from, but if you're coming from a monitor that may have already had G-Sync or higher refresh rates than 100 Hz, like this panel behind me, then you may not see the biggest benefit in gaming, and ultimately it comes down to what monitors you already have and what monitor you're looking to, I guess, upgrade to. So right now, I do actually kind of miss those extra monitors just a little bit in certain tasks, and who knows, in the future I may go ahead and have a second monitor. In fact, I've thought about the idea of floating another monitor above the ultra-wide instead of off to the side to give myself that extra real estate that I like to have, especially when I am video editing. So that's an option that may actually happen down the road, and let me know what you think in the comments below about a second monitor with an ultra-wide. Would you put it up top? Would you put it to the left, to the right, or somewhere else? Let me know down below. And I know this video was a little bit rambling, but if you liked it, give it a like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. Those things help the channel out a lot. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. They are the same tag for your convenience. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.